Ready to take your life to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Get all the information you need to be better, improve everything, and live life like a pro. This is the MenProvement Podcast with Sean Russell.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the MenProvement Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm your host, Sean Russell. And on this show, I interview incredible men from around the world, incredible listeners from around the world to get stories, step-by-step instructions, and many other ways that we can improve our lives and become better men. Today, I interviewed my new friend, Jim Wolfe, and he's an incredible guy. In his 20s, he decided to commit to a 5-year journey of self-improvement. And I'm on my second, or pretty much done with my second year of my journey of self-improvement. So talking to someone who's been doing it for 5 and who is now taking everything they've learned and packaging it and helping guys with it is really cool and really inspiring. And in this podcast, essentially we talk about how to be happy, how to be a happy, fulfilled man from within. And that's the key. The key is from within, because many people think that happiness is something to be sought after, but it's completely wrong. Many people in relationships project happiness on their partner and are looking for their partner to fulfill them. But this is also wrong, and it, as you will learn, is what leads to toxic relationships and relationships ending. So how do we be happy right now, right after we're done listening to this show, without a Lamborghini, without tons of money in the bank, and maybe even without a job, without a girlfriend, without whatever it is that you desire in your life? How do you be happy and stop chasing and let it come to you through your happiness? And that is exactly what you're going to learn about today. We're going to talk with Jim for a while about all this and why being happy from within is essentially truly being happy, and there is no other way to do it. And then Jim gives 5 to 6 incredible exercises that you can literally turn the podcast off and start doing in your life. And some of them are very powerful, very, very powerful. And I'm going to start doing them in my own life personally. And it's a really great show. I'm sure I'm going to have Jim back on the podcast because we connected really well. And enjoy this episode because it is truly, truly powerful. This is Jim Wolfe on how to be truly happy and get the love that you deserve. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the show. I'm here with my new friend, Jim Wolfe. What's up, Jim? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Sean?
I'm doing good, man. It's awesome to have you on here. We just connected, and I'm pumped to learn about you. Let's just talk about what you do, who you are, and how you got into this industry.
Yeah, that sounds good. So if we back up about 12 or 13 years, I actually got my first dating book. And that was actually before the game came out and all this kind of pickup stuff actually even started.
Lucky you.
I know, yeah. And so I read this book, and that was the first time that I realized, kind of like you and probably a lot of the people listening, that, you know, dating and relationships are skills that you can learn. Mm-hmm. And so I learned a lot from that book, and I ended up being with the woman that I really wanted to be with at the time. And I dated her for like 5 years, and she's a really amazing person. But one day we were sitting together in my living room, and even though she was amazing and I was with her, in that moment I felt really lonely and kind of miserable. And I didn't know really why that was or what the deal was. I thought that, you know, having the job I really wanted and being with the person I really wanted to be with and having kind of all of that stuff in my life together would make me happy. Mm-hmm. And it didn't. And when you work really hard to get that stuff and then it doesn't make you happy, it's really scary. And so I actually gave myself 5 years to just work on myself and personal growth. And the 5 years has passed, and now I kind of want to share what I've learned with all of the guys out there, because there's not really a shortcut. You have to eventually just do the hard work on yourself, but I think you can save some time on that path, and that's what I want to do for guys.
Interesting. So So you said about 12 years ago is when you got into dating. Was it pretty short after that you got into this relationship?
Yeah, it was very, very short after that.
All right, and then how many years went by until you realized that you weren't fulfilled?
That's a good question. I think it kind of was more of an off and on gradual process, and then that one moment kind of crystallized it.
Yeah.
And what I realized later is, it was all about me and loving my life and myself on my own, and it had nothing to do with the person I was with at all. She's an awesome person.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, is essentially how to be happy on your own without being reliant on any sort of external influence, which is a great topic, and I'm pumped to get into it, but I'm pumped to learn more about this exploration. So did you decide to dump your girlfriend before you went on this 5-year journey of yours?
Yeah, I mean, we broke up. I wasn't, I didn't feel like I was in a place where I could continue dating her, and so we broke up, and she's actually married now and has a kid, and I think she's really happy, so I'm really happy for her.
No, it's great. And so it's a pretty crazy concept, because I've been doing personal development myself for just a little over 2 years. So to think that you just decided one day, like, okay, I'm gonna commit to straight up personal development for 5 years. Did you actually have like a number mark, or was it just a decision to try to work on yourself that lasted 5 years?
So when I figured out kind of like what my specific problem was at the time, I read a book that said that usually takes about 5 years to actually process everything. And so when I read that, I was like, okay, well, if that's how long it takes, I'll give myself that time.
That's cool, man. I've never heard that, but I guess it makes sense. It does take a long time. It takes a lot longer than most people think. I've never heard 5 years, but I guess that's good news for me and anyone else who's been doing this for a few years and has been seeing good results, but it's kind of not there yet, because I'm definitely not there yet. I still have times in my life where I'm like, I feel like there's something missing,
Well, and as you know, it's a lifelong process.
Absolutely, yeah.
And not only, I think it's a lifelong process with both relationship skills and also developing yourself. I think you can continue to learn more about that until you pass away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And what you've talked about so far, with you thinking that you would have the happiness that you were searching for after you got the raise, or after you got the job, or you got the girlfriend, it reminds me of that concept, be, do, have versus like have, do, be. When you think that, you're in a rut, you're in a state, you just got dumped and you're very unhappy, you think you need to find that girl to be happy, or you need to, I'll just be happy once I get that apartment. I have so many friends, they're not happy, but they're just waiting for that next thing. And I find myself doing it a lot too, but in reality, the way to do it is to be happy how you are now, and then through that you'll be able to do what you want and have all that other great stuff. And I'm pumped to get into this topic, because it's so important, and we haven't had it on the show today, and it's focused around inner happiness. So let's jump into it, man. I guess my first question would be, that I have written down, was, what's the biggest problem that most men have in relationships? And I would imagine that it is that they are searching for happiness externally through their partner.
I think that's definitely one. And kind of expecting something or someone else to make you happy is a big problem, I think, for a lot of guys, and a lot of people, actually. And as a guy, I think it's even more important, because it's a gift of masculinity to kind of be an emotional leader, because women, not all of them, but women tend to be more affected by their external environment. And so however you feel is how she gets to feel when she's around you. Mm-hmm. So if you feel happy and excited about life, she gets to feel that way. If you feel comfortable, she gets to feel that way. If you're in love with yourself, guess what? She gets to feel that way.
Yeah.
And that's what guys don't realize, because it's kind of like we're more internally focused in general. And so you have to be the emotional leader of your relationships, and it starts out with doing that for yourself, and it's a skill that you can learn, and that's one of the things that I teach guys how to do.
Cool, man. So how do you become the emotional leader in a relationship?
That's a great question. So to be an emotional leader, you have to learn how to put yourself in positive emotional states. And it's not really magical, but it's a process that you can learn. And I think a lot of people in the United States, especially in Western culture, especially, but probably all over the world, they think that external events causing your emotions is kind of more real and more acceptable. And that's kind of the way it should be. Like, you shouldn't feel good until you get that raise, or, you don't have a real reason to be. Well, the happiest and most successful guys and the guys who are really emotional leaders understand that what positive psychology calls synthetic emotions are actually the exact same thing as these, quote, real emotions that are caused by external factors. And so I think that's the first thing to realize, is that emotions that you give yourself are just as real as emotions caused by external factors. And there's a really great TED Talk that everyone should watch if they haven't already. You might have. It's called The Surprising Science of Happiness. And Dr. Dan Gilbert talks about, we always think that life events, these big life events like winning the lottery, are going to make us happy. And what the data shows is actually that things like hitting the lottery and, getting in an accident where you lose the use of your legs, both of those events, people who go through both of those events actually both return to their level of happiness that they had before those events after a few months.
Really?
So those big things that we kind of think like, oh, once this happens, I'll be happy, don't actually make us happy. But positive psychology is finding more and more things that actually do create that fulfillment or happiness or whatever you want to call it inside you, and you can give it to yourself. And one of the most powerful ways that you can do that is to practice gratitude.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest things.
And it's a practice, right? So you have to continually do it, but that's one way to give yourself these positive emotions. It's kind of forcing your mind to focus on all of the positive things that are going right in your life, which is hard for our minds to do. So you have to practice it. And then on the other side of that, you have to go after your genuine desires. And that kind of stretches out your level of long-term happiness. So on one hand, be grateful for what you already have and what's already going well in your life. And also go after your desires, but don't make those things that you want into needs, because you really don't need them. All you need is, food, water, shelter, etc.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I love what you're saying so far. And people always email me all the time to disagree with people, but I literally 100% agree with everything that you're saying here now. And I think that it is a huge problem in our culture where people think that they're going to be happy based on an external event. It's really interesting what you said about the people who lose the use of their legs in car accidents, because I have heard obviously that the lottery it's not going to make you happy, and it can for a little while, but then you return to your original baseline state. But I haven't I never heard about people losing the I can't say this losing
it's really hard
the
to say.
use of their legs, returning to their normal level of happiness afterwards, because I know that can be such an intense loss, to be stuck in a wheelchair. And yeah, just I don't know if you can go into anything more on that, or if we even need to.
Well, and that's why it's surprising. We would think that those things wouldn't be true, but the data shows that it is. And then the other thing that I would say is you can apply the same thing to a relationship with a woman. Like, you're going to go through that honeymoon phase originally where this person's so great and you feel a little bit better in general about your life and yourself. But eventually you're going to always return back to whoever you are right now. And so developing your internal character is really the only way to kind of be happy and fulfilled in the long term, instead of just like kind of feeling good in spurts when good things happen to you.
Yeah. So you're always going to return to your baseline. So essentially it's up to you to make sure that your baseline is where you want it to be without the need for anything externally affecting it, right?
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. So you mentioned gratitude, which obviously I think that everyone in the world should be doing. Everyone you talk to, every big expert you listen to, Jack Canfield, all these guys, it's just they preach gratitude, 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 and it's one thing that I started. And like you said, it is a practice. So at first, I actually had to write down daily 5 things I was grateful for, and I made sure I did this every morning and night. Until when shit starts to hit the fan and you get a flat tire and stuff and you start to get pissed off, you automatically start to reframe and think of things that you're grateful for, and it completely changes your life, and I think brings so much more positivity into your life. So it's an incredible tip. And yeah, and chasing your desires, I mean, obviously I think that's the core to happiness. Most people who are doing things that they don't love, at jobs they hate, that's the root of being unhappy. But let's go through, I guess you sent me some awesome things, and I want to jump through each of them to essentially give guys like a roadmap to becoming internally fulfilled and happy on their own from within.
Okay.
So take it away, man.
Where would you like me to start?
Wherever you think. I mean, I guess we're on number 3, right? We went on gratitude, chasing desires. Can you give any more information on chasing desires? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that don't know what they want to do. I think that's a big problem in our society.
Absolutely. So there's a book called The Passion Test, and it will help you kind of figure out what the top 5 things you care about most are. And so when I did that passion test process for the first time, my number 1 passion in life was something that I didn't even know I was interested in before I did it. So that could be a resource for figuring that out. But once you know kind of what you want at a deeper level than where you are in this moment, there is a kind of wall of fear between where you are now and where you want to be. And you have to break through that fear or embrace it or somehow overcome it. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that I teach guys how to do, because, confidence is not feeling any fear. It's being able to act even though you're afraid. And
yeah.
You know this since you've been doing personal growth for 2 years. Anything that is ultimately rewarding for a long period of time, there's going to be some fear involved in doing that thing.
Yeah.
Even if you know it's a good thing, like just a simple example, I went to Colombia by myself a couple years ago, and I've traveled around the world a little bit, and I love traveling. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I think it's also a great thing to do for personal growth. And even though I've had an amazing experience every time I've gone to another country, like a couple of weeks before my trip was going to happen, I actually had a little bit, not like a panic attack, but I felt like a huge wave of anxiety coming over my body.
Yeah.
Even though I'd done it before, but it was my first time traveling by myself to another country, and it caused me to feel fear, even though I knew it was going to be amazing. And then when I went on the trip, it was amazing. And when I got back, even almost a couple of years later, it's still giving me kind of positive energy. Even though that's all true, there is still fear involved. And I think that's going to happen. And in fact, the more kind of beneficial something is going to be for developing your character, you probably will feel more fear in those cases.
No, it's that's cool to hear that other people go through that, because I'm the exact same way, man. I mean, I'm here in Budapest, and trust me, I had a lot of hesitation and fear. I get fear on a daily basis to do things that I haven't done yet, whether it be involving women or going on dates with a beautiful girl. I still have that feeling, and you're like, oh, I could still just not go. But that was how I was when I was first starting to just get out there and not just get numbers and actually take these girls out. It's like you have that fear, but like you said, why it's such like a trick from the universe. It's like a test. The more beneficial something is for you, the harder it seems to actually do it, and the more fear will be there. So that almost to me is a sign. If you're feeling that fear, it's like a sign to do it. Like you have to do it, and it's gonna just elevate your life and take you to the next level.
Absolutely. And the thing is, your mind wants to keep you safe, and so it's basically it's protecting your current identity is all it is, because you're going to change.
No, yeah, it's that comfort. You want to stay in your little comfort bubble.
One thing that's a really specific thing that guys can do to help with that is to read biographies of people that they admire.
Okay.
And that's something that's really helped me out a lot, because we always see kind of the end result of someone's life process. You know, like we look at George Washington and he's really mythologized in the United States, or someone like George Clooney that we all look up to. Those guys went through a process and faced a lot of their own fears and made a lot of mistakes, but we never see that about these people that we kind of mythologize and admire.
Mm-hmm.
But if you read their biography, you see kind of a similar hero's journey that every single person who's achieved what they wanted to achieve in life has taken. And it makes you feel better about kind of going on your own path and facing your own fears, and just kind of seeing that the people that you admire are people just like you, and they have the same emotions and they have the same challenges. And I think that really started to help me. Plus, when you read a biography, you get kind of the benefits of fiction, where it's kind of a story. It's kind of a little bit easier to read in some ways than a lot of nonfiction. And then you also get very specific, actionable advice, just gleaning it from the lives of people who are extraordinary. So I think that's a really powerful practice to do as well.
Yeah, man, I think that's one of the biggest things that holds people back from success, is this unreal definition and vision that we have of success. And I was big on this topic a while ago, that, you know, they referred to it as the long game. And you look at people like Leonardo da Vinci and you think, oh, he's a genius, you know, and Nikola Tesla, oh, he's a genius. But no one really knows that the years, the decades of bullshit and apprenticeships and failure that they went through. And Tesla was broke and living on his parents' couch when he was 30 years old, and Da Vinci failed over and over and over, and didn't paint the Last Supper until he was 40, you know, and he finally succeeded at the age of 40. And people just see these successful people, like one I love talking about is Jim Carrey, and they think they were just born successful, like they just did it, and it's so easy to think that way. But Jim Carrey was homeless. He was homeless for years trying to get a role, and now he's this huge famous actor. And I think, yeah, it's very, I would imagine that pretty much everyone except maybe Justin Bieber goes through those years, like 5 to 10 years of just hard work to get where they want to be. But so that's really cool that you mentioned that. Do you have any favorite biographies that you could recommend to guys?
Yeah, I love Benjamin Franklin. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I think it's called Benjamin Franklin, A Life. And then Ron Chernow wrote a really good biography of George Washington and also Alexander Hamilton. Those are really good.
I've heard good things about Arnold Schwarzenegger's Total Recall.
Yeah, that's on my list. I just recently read a Michael Jordan biography as well that was pretty good by Lazenby. So that's another one they could check out.
Okay, that's cool, man.
So that's a really good transition into kind of having a fixed versus a growth mindset, which I'm sure you've talked about.
Actually, I don't think we brought that up. I know about it myself, read about it many times, but haven't specifically spoken about it.
I think in our culture, we tend to have a fixed mindset where it's like, oh, we're just born with charisma or success or whatever, like you were just saying about these people that we admire. We think that they were just born successful, but it's always a process. And they did a study on school children a long time ago, and what they found is they gave the students a task, and then they rated their performance on the task, and then they asked the students some questions about their performance on the task. And what they found is the students who rated their performance on that, or the students who based their performance, how well they did on that task, on their just like kind of personality traits and who they are in general, did significantly worse in several areas of life than the students who just specifically focused on the context of that task and had more of a growth mindset. And so what that means is, if you ask someone out and they say no, does that mean that you are an unattractive person in general? Or does that mean that in that context, maybe she wasn't attracted to you, or your approach was flawed in some way? You know, do you apply kind of the feedback from your environment to you in general, or to a context that you can improve? And that's kind of like what having a growth mindset really means. And real success and all the people who achieve what they want to do in life tend to have a growth mindset, because that's how success works. You know, wherever you are now, if you have a growth mindset and you learn from every piece of feedback you get over the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's and it's not like you're born with a growth or fixed mindset, is it? You just develop whichever one you want based on your environment until you realize that you choose, you know?
Well, I think we tend to take on whatever mindset the people around us have.
Absolutely, yeah.
But once you're aware of it, you can just choose to have it starting right now.
Exactly. So anyone who can reconcile or connect with having a fixed mindset right now can, you could start your new life right now with a growth mindset. It's a really cool concept. And yeah, so let's jump back to creating internal validation and internal happiness.
Okay, so a good transition from what we just talked about into that is your self-image. Okay. And your self-image is one of the strongest levers that you have for changing your life and how you feel inside. Because whatever kind of person you think you are is really powerful over your emotions and actions. So if you think you're bad with women, for example, you're going to do things and feel things that are in line with that. And until you change your self-image, it's really difficult to change how you feel inside. And there's another really great book that I want to recommend. It's called Psycho-Cybernetics. You probably have heard of it or recommended it before.
I have heard of it. I haven't read it, but yeah, I hear good things.
It's written by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, and it's still rated one of the top 50 self-help books of all time, even though it was written decades and decades ago. And basically, he was a plastic surgeon, and he realized that some of his patients, after they had plastic surgery, were a lot happier, they were more comfortable with themselves, etc. And some people, even though they looked better, still didn't feel good about themselves. And so he was like, I wonder why that is. And he discovered this thing called a self-image. And that's what Psycho-Cybernetics is about. It's about how you think about yourself, the kind of person that you think you are. And so fixed versus growth mindset applied to you and how you see yourself is kind of what a self-image is. And what my main point about this is the kind of person that you think you are right now isn't necessarily who you actually are. You can change your self-image. It's just who you think you are. And it's relative and subjective, right? So you know a lot of different people in your life, and they all have a different image of you. There are people who think really highly of you. There are people who maybe don't like you as much. But none of that is actually 100% true. It's all just a perspective. And the way that you see your own self is just your perspective.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. So how would you go about changing your self-image? For example, someone who thinks they are bad with women right now, how can they change their self-image to truly believe that they are someone who's great with women?
It's a great question. So the first thing is just the awareness that we just kind of uncovered. And then after that, your mind has to have some kind of plausible evidence to believe what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to switch your mindset to saying, like, I am successful with women, you can start asking yourself questions instead of making statements. And that opens your mind up to evidence. So you could say something like, why is it that I'm so successful with women? So you can ask yourself a question. Or, why do women find me attractive now, all of a sudden, for some reason? You can just ask yourself an open-ended question like that, and then your mind will start to search for that evidence instead of evidence of what you've been telling yourself before that's negative. And so once you stop and think about that, you can go back into your past history, and you don't need very much evidence. You just need like a little grain of, that one interaction 2 years ago went really well. That's one reason why this is true. And you can just start with that and build from there. And the more evidence that you find to support your new self-image, the stronger it's going to become.
That's cool, man. And it reminds me of something that I talk about when I have like a guide to hacking habits. And one of them was a method from James Clear, which was like, make your habits identity-based. So if you want to get into the habit of going out and meeting women, instead of thinking, I'm shit with women, but I'm going to go out and start talking to them every day and get good at it, you would instead change your identity, and you would say, you know, I'm a guy who is working on getting better with women every single day, instead of thinking, you know, I'm this, but I'm going to do that. And it just reminded me of that, but it's very cool, man. And it's a good tool for essentially, personal growth over time. And again, over time, it needs to be stated. Would it be worth trying to get evidence by going out into the world and finding that evidence?
Yeah, so I think you start with experiences that you've had, and then you just build up more evidence. So I really like your example of going out and actually talking to women, because then you're going to get more feedback. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking for those positive pieces of evidence, your mind is going to find it. It's all about what you're focusing on and what information you're filtering in and out.
Yeah, your reticular activating system. Yeah, I think we talked about that with Andy Murphy. So what you believe, your mind is programmed to affirm, because you're getting bombarded with billions or millions of bits of information every second, and your reticular activating system will only let in the 10 to however many bits of information that your brain can handle to affirm your beliefs, your core beliefs. So it just literally changes what you see and what you find in your life. And that's kind of like, that's how I think the law of attraction works. What you focus on is what you start to see around you. It's like if you just got a blue Prius, you start to see them everywhere, you know, like that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think that is such a powerful point, you know, making it about your identity and your self-image, either way you want to say it. It's so powerful, because that, like you said, it sets up your mind to kind of look for that in your environment. And a lot of people, when they're thinking about changing their identity or their self-image, they think like being more positive about that is kind of lying to yourself. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, no, this is who I really am. But actually, that's not true. The truth is, you have millions of positive and negative things about you, and they're all equally true. So you can just choose how positively you want to view yourself. It's always an illusion. It's just a matter of how positive or negative that illusion is. And really, about every single human being in the world, there are just as many positives as negatives. And it's all just about what you decide to focus on. Mm-hmm. And then going back to kind of the power of self-image and identity, they did a study on school children again, where they basically divided them into a couple of groups, and they told some of the classes, like, hey, you guys should be really clean. Here's why being clean and tidy is important. And they kind of gave them all this information and this list of reasons why they should be clean. Mm-hmm. And then for the other classes, they told them, you guys are the neatest and tidiest class in this school, or you guys are one of the neatest and tidiest classes in the school. And they made it about their attributes and their identity. And what they found is the students who were given the attribute of being neat and clean were significantly cleaner than the students who they tried to just convince to be clean. And the same thing goes for yourself, which is what we just talked about, where it's really hard to just take in a lot of information and then act on it. But as soon as you give yourself a positive attribute that now you can grow into, it's going to be a lot easier to become that new person and to take action towards that new self-image that you've given yourself. And that's the real magic of it. I'm not really a woo-woo guy, but it's really powerful.
Yeah. So I think what we went over so much information on self-image. It was kind of like mind warping for me at times. I think what I got out of it was, deciding who you want to be and picking attributes for yourself to essentially embody and become, and then prove to yourself that you embody these attributes based on past experiences and new experiences by going out into the world and taking action.
Exactly, 100% correct.
All right, cool. And nice, man. So I really like that. And I see one of the points that you had here was about, which I think is a good tangent, is about self-investment.
Yes.
And that's something that I have recently started getting very serious about, as I was here in Budapest drinking tap water for the last 2 weeks and haven't been feeling 100% because I was trying to save money. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I need to, this is my investment. I spent a little more money on a nice place and a better location in the city, and I can't even invest my own body by drinking purified water. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, becoming an emotional leader and all the stuff that we've been talking about, one part of that is making yourself feel good physically. And it's been stated so many times by so many different people, but I mean, really, everything that you do and everything that you eat is an investment in how you're going to feel in the future.
Yeah.
So if you just force yourself to do your workout today, you're going to feel better 3 days from now. If you eat well, you're going to feel better longer. And so that's the very start of it, is kind of that basic physical stuff that you just talked about with the tap water example.
Yeah.
But it can go as high as you want. As soon as you see yourself as an appreciating asset that you invest into, and I would argue your most important investment, that's when you're actually wealthy. That's, to me, what true wealth means. And the more you invest in yourself, the more you can give to the world, because you'll have more value.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, that you're an appreciating asset rather than just, externally investing in all these things. Invest in yourself. That's huge, man. I think it's, for some reason, it's so hard to spend a lot of money on food, like organic food, grass-fed beef. I've always found it so hard to invest money in much better food, but I realize that it's like the best investment that I could possibly make, because I'm going to feel better. When I feel better, I'm going to be able to reach more people and work more and work cleaner and then make more money and be able to actually afford the stuff that I want. And it's just one of those things, again, like, it's hard to do, but it pays off so much.
Absolutely. And when you do stuff like that, that gives your mind the evidence it needs to actually believe that you care about yourself. And that means that you are actually, in reality, more valuable, because you're going to think you are. And that it's not just about food. I mean, it's also about investing in programs like your academy or some of my products or whatever it is. The more kind of resources you spend on developing yourself physically, emotionally, and mentally, the higher your value is going to rise and the more you have to give. And, you're going to have a better life. And I think, if you're listening to this right now, you probably get that. The analogy that a lot of people use for this is kind of like the oxygen mask, like you got to take care of yourself. And I think that's an okay analogy, but there's another one that really strikes me. I worked for college admissions for 6.5 years, and I learned a lot about scholarships during that time. And what I learned from learning about scholarships is that when someone invests, $100,000 into a scholarship fund, they don't just give out all that money right away to a couple of students. They invest that money and let it grow, and they're actually only allowed to distribute 2% of that principal amount each year to students. And so if you kind of think of yourself as a appreciating scholarship fund where the 2% is the value that you're giving to the world, the more your value grows, the more that 2% is going to be over time. And you're going to probably be able to give way more than that initial investment amount over the long term. And so kind of seeing yourself as that appreciating scholarship fund where you're growing and investing in yourself as heavily as possible, and then giving away a small percentage of that to the world to create win-wins wherever you go. I think that's a really good analogy to use for how to invest in yourself.
Yeah, man. I love it. So we've gone over a lot already. Is there anything, I want to go into practical exercises that you have, but before that, I think, are there any more pieces of advice or steps to kind of becoming happy from within that we can talk about? Because I'll talk about all of them, I'll keep going all day. It's like amazing stuff.
Yeah, just one last thing real quick. If you're out there kind of searching for validation from the world, which as social animals, we're kind of wired to do, one thing that was really interesting for me to realize is that when you feel validated by someone else or by some accomplishment that you've achieved, you're actually still just validating yourself. At all times, anytime that you feel valid, you're validating yourself. It appears that is coming from outside, but what's really happening is that in your mind, you have criteria that you think makes you valuable, and when that criteria is met, then you decide to let yourself feel valuable and feel validated. And so I think it's really good to kind of look at what criteria you're using. And I would recommend switching your criteria to, I'm perfectly imperfect exactly how I am right now in this moment. I am where I am. I'm going to keep growing, but I also accept myself completely in this moment, and I'm going to validate myself completely in this moment. And learning how to just validate yourself makes you incredibly valuable in a real way, because if you're not seeking validation from successes or from other people, you're going to be one of those people that everyone wants to be around, because everyone is searching for external validation. And if you can give it to yourself, you can give a little bit of that away to other people who are looking for it. And that makes you inherently more valuable.
Yeah, man. I love it. Yeah, that's pretty much the topic of the whole show, is how to be internally validated rather than seeking it from yourself. I mean, from the world or a partner in a relationship, or, you know, banking it on that new job. And it's the one of the biggest pieces of advice I could ever give anyone, is to stop seeking validation from outside. And it talks about everywhere, and it even goes into the idea of meeting women. It's when you go out and you're trying to impress people and do all this, it's just not, it's not coming from a place of overflow and fulfillment first. But when you can be validated and you 100% know and trust and love yourself from within, regardless of anyone's thoughts, anything that happens, and accept positive things when they do come, like rewards, like you said, because your belief in that is your validation, then I think you've got it. You know, I think you can do anything from there.
I mean, that's where your life really starts to turn around, is when you understand and accept those things, and switching from trying to get to giving and attracting. And, you know, it's like the example with dating is like, are you trying to get her to like you, or are you trying to see if she's right for your life and sharing yourself with her? Those are two very different frames that you're approaching dating from, and it affects everything you do within that context and every other context of your life.
Yeah, no, that's what we're all about. You know, we work here with John Cooper, and he's pretty much the opposite of pickup. You know, he was a pickup guy, and he talks about how it just comes from a place of taking and needing for fulfillment. But if you come from a place of fulfillment first and overflow, and go out there and give, and truly believe that you are inviting a girl into your life and checking out if she's right for you, then there is no rejection, there is no approach anxiety, there's just excitement, and your whole world in the dating aspect begins to change. And it translates to everything. It translates to work, it translates to sports even, it translates to relationships. You know, if you're relying on your partner to make you happy, that's probably why there's over 50% divorce rate in the United States. Meanwhile, it's the people who are happy first and projecting their happiness outward that typically have the happiest marriages, the happiest relationships.
That's 100% true. And, you know, the data that I've seen, and I studied relationship satisfaction as part of my master's degree program. The data that I've seen shows that only about 10% of marriages are actually happy, healthy, and functional. I think it's really difficult, and part of that reason is you have to be fulfilled and whole and complete and happy on your own first. And so why don't we just start there before we, you know, start sharing ourselves?
So that would be your biggest piece of advice for guys in relationships who want it to last long term, is to stop seeking outward from their partner, projecting themselves onto their partner, and be the happiness first. You know, that's cool, man.
100%. Yeah. And it applies to everyone, whether they're in a relationship or not. You know, she can't validate your existence, and she can't make you happy. So stop asking her to.
Yeah, that's interesting. That she can't. Like, I like how you said when we talked earlier that she can't validate your existence. She can't even love you as much as you need to love yourself. It's physically impossible, and it's something that just most people don't understand until they hear it.
Well, our culture does a really good job of kind of portraying this myth of once you get someone to love you, then you're okay. And I mean, once you break out of that, it's so obvious, but when you're in it, it's hard to see that.
Yeah. Cool, man. I love it. This has been a really cool topic so far, and what I like to do more than anything really is leave people with practical steps that they can go out and use today, exercises and things to embody what we've talked about. And there already have been so many that you can go out and use in your life to see a huge difference. But I know you have multiple exercises for guys to essentially live this, not just listen to this podcast, but go on and have it become a part of their life. So let's talk about some of those.
Perfect. So let's start with something that I made up for myself, and it's been really powerful for me, so I'm excited to share it. And I call it an appreciation journal. This is very similar to gratitude, but it's a practice that helps your actual social connections. And we all have people in our life that we kind of don't appreciate or don't like as much as other people. I think that's totally normal. But it's a really good practice to start looking for positives in other people and make that kind of your normal way of being. And one really good way to do this is to have an appreciation journal and just get a sheet of paper. You can use your phone, whatever you want to do, and basically write down the name of one person who you don't like that much. And it could be some TV character, it could be a real person in your life, whatever it is. Write down their name and then try to come up with 5 things that you genuinely appreciate about them, and then kind of feel that appreciation. And that can be really, really difficult at first, especially if there's someone you really, really don't like. But you can start out with really simple things like, I genuinely appreciate that this person provides a good example of behavior that I don't want to follow. That's something that you can appreciate about almost anyone.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, yeah.
And it's true. Like, you don't have to convince yourself that that's true. And so you can start with those kind of things and then just build from there. But if you do that for, let's say 30 days, if you just try one person a day for 30 days, you will not even believe how much more social and how much less judgmental you feel after that period of time. And I think it really helped open me up. And the thing about it is, you're not going to just like start spending time with people who are bad for you. You're not going to like be unsafe. It actually just makes you a more positive person and helps you even find more positives about yourself. So it's part of that being an emotional leader is I'm going to decide to look for the positives in myself and in other people. And that makes you more highly valuable and also allows you to feel better inside every day of your life.
That's cool, man. That's a really amazing piece of advice that I don't think anyone's ever said before. You know, you said you have crafted it for yourself, which makes it even more powerful. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's going to be something that I adopt into my own life. See how well it really does work, because it sounds amazing.
It was really powerful for me when I first did it, and I should probably go back and do it some more.
Yeah, there's so many things. You know, you gotta pick like the ones that work for you. But I'm going to try this one. So what else you got? I'll let you just run through them, man. Take the wheel.
Sure. So here's a really good one. And it's so funny because you and I are kind of giving advice to other people right now. But one thing that I found incredibly powerful is whenever you think this person should be doing this, stop yourself in that moment and kind of turn it around on yourself and say, how does that advice apply to me? And then really kind of think about that and take action on it. Because most of the time when we're judging other people, it's usually about our own insecurities and things that we need to work on ourselves. And that's been a really huge source of personal growth for me. Whenever I'm thinking something like, oh, this person needs to be doing this or should be doing that, and then just flipping it around to myself, I was like, oh, this applies to me this way. Holy cow, like, why don't I take my own advice? And it's so funny because once I started taking my own advice and stopped giving it out to other people unsolicited or even thinking that way, people actually started to be more influenced by me, which is interesting. But I mean, I think like we have a tendency to think, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Well, anytime you hear some advice or think of advice to give other people, just think, this is about me, and how does it apply? And just kind of allow yourself to become more aware through that experience.
Yeah, awareness, man. Awareness is like, it all comes down to awareness in the end, because without that, you're not improving anything. It's so funny. Every time conversation I have with people, it just comes down to being aware and then looking inward, and yeah, it's incredible.
Well, and you got to break the same pain barrier to have that awareness that we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to do that, but it's worth it long term.
Yeah, it's hard to call yourself out and let your ego just step aside for a second, and but that's where the true growth happens.
100%. Okay, so here's another one. Try pausing for 3 to 5 seconds after someone finishes speaking when you're having a conversation with someone. This is actually really good for dates too. I tried this as an experiment for a week, and it was pretty amazing. I don't know about you, but my mind kind of works pretty fast, and it's not too difficult for me to kind of think of something to say next. And I know a lot of guys struggle with, what am I going to say next in a conversation with a woman?
Yeah, I do actually. I struggle. I struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, it's really common, right? And so one thing to try out is the next time you're talking to anyone, whether it's on a date or not, just try pausing for 3 to 5 seconds before you say your next thing. And that does a lot of really good things. When I tried this, almost every single person I was talking to filled that silence with more. And what they said the second time was actually kind of like deeper and more meaningful. And I was like, wow, I've been missing out on connecting with people at a different level because I was worried about what to say next.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's I've had that tip here with Vanessa Van Edwards when she was on the show. She's of scienceofpeople.com, and she calls it the triple nod. And she says every time someone finishes a sentence, nod slowly 3 times, and pretty much every time they will continue talking. It's just like this conversational hack. And second of all, JD Dallas, when he talks about in our dating programs, is being comfortable with that silence. And like you said, if you can sit there in that silence for 3 to 5 seconds before you speak, they're more likely to jump on it, and you kind of just have that masculine, that edge in the conversation, especially on a date where you're comfortable and you've reached that comfort level.
Yeah, I mean, it helps you with comfort. It helps you with confidence. It helps you feel less anxious. Like, you don't feel like it's your job to fill that silence.
That's cool.
Definitely. And try that. What's really interesting too is that the more someone else shares with you, the more they like you and the closer they feel to you. So if you're on a date, it's actually better because she's investing more in you now.
Yeah, that's cool. And I read something the other day that, just like you said, the more the more someone invests in you, the more they start to like you. And if someone actually helps you out, the more favors someone does for you, the more they like you as well. I don't know how that ties into here, but it was just a cool little piece of information that I heard the other day. Like, in the past, women used to walk by men and kind of drop their handkerchief, and the man would come up and give it to her. This was on the School of Greatness, yeah. And like, one of the tips the guy had for women was to get men to help them out. Hey, can you help me do this? Because men want to come to the rescue, and it actually psychologically makes you like them more when you do someone a favor, and when you invest in someone, it's just a natural phenomenon. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think they call it the Ben Franklin effect, and I think Matthew Hussey talks about that in his advice for women. But
I think that's who was on the School of Greatness. Yeah. Yeah,
so I mean, it works both ways, but yeah, the more you get other people to invest in you, the better for both of you.
Yeah, so is there, you got any others? I think we got a few minutes here.
Okay, cool, yeah, just a couple of more. If you struggle with kind of like trusting yourself and decisiveness, being able to make decisions and stick to them is a masculine quality that I think we should cultivate. And so one really easy way to start doing that, and to kind of give your mind that evidence that we've been talking about, is the next time you go out to a restaurant, open the menu and just kind of browse over it. Don't worry about it too much, and just pick the very first thing that sounds good to you, and then close the menu and stick to that choice no matter what. And so even if like the server comes over and there's a really good special, or like you hear the other people in your group are ordering something and it sounds good, just stick with what you originally picked and order it. And it sounds really silly, but it's actually a really strong and simple way to practice kind of trusting yourself and going with your own reality in a way that's like really, really low risk. And so try that the next time you're at a restaurant, and you can kind of build that practice from there.
Yeah, I was wondering when you were saying it, like how this relates to becoming more happy from within. But yeah, it is that trust, and it's something that I struggle with. I'm like the most undecisive guy sometimes, and when I read the show notes that you sent me over, I realized that the day before or an hour before I was at the restaurant, and it took me like 15 minutes to decide between two dishes, and I was like, oh man, that's a good tip from me, like, which is why I was so excited to get you on here, because a lot of these exercises that I read, I'm like, wow, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that. So I was pumped for other guys to hear it and get something out of it as well.
I think it's really difficult to go with who you are and what you really want, especially in Western culture, when you hear 1,000 messages a day saying, you know what, your car isn't good enough, you need a Jaguar, or even like food commercials, like you're cool if you eat at Taco Bell, whatever. Like all those messages are coming in all the time. And so I think it's really important to strengthen your kind of self-trust muscle. And that's, a really good way to start out. And then the last one is pretty cool. This has been shared on a lot of other sources, but I think it's really powerful, and it's just a qualifying game. And qualifying just basically means, I'm sure you've talked about it on your show before, but qualifying just basically means trying to prove that you're valuable to other people.
Okay.
And that could be anything from like, look at me kind of like flexing at the gym, to I'm going to win 3 gold medals and then everyone's going to like me, or, I'm going to, because I have this really attractive girlfriend, now I'm valuable, or whatever it is from external that's going to make you valuable. Anytime you're saying, and this actually happens a lot in conversations, like we don't necessarily do it on purpose, but subconsciously we don't feel like we have as much value as the people we're talking to. And it comes out through qualifying by trying to convince them that we're cool. And so anytime you catch yourself doing or saying something to make yourself sound cool or to try to get external validation from the world, just remind yourself by like snapping a rubber band around your wrist or putting $1 into a qualifying jar. And you can actually do that with groups of people too. And I think it's a really super powerful practice just to be aware of when you're qualifying. And if you start looking for this, you're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see it a lot on your Facebook wall. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of qualifying on there.
Oh God, forget about it. I struggle with it. I mean, this is a good one because I catch myself, and like you said, once again, it comes down to awareness. And when you're not at the level of growing, you're not aware that you're doing these things. But once you start to become aware and you do, like, you're looking in where you're catching these things, is when you can begin to change and grow. And I've caught myself, I'm not bad. Like, I honestly don't brag. I don't tell anyone about what I do most of the time when I meet them, because quite frankly, I find it ridiculously hard to explain. And for a while, I was like kind of self-conscious about it. I was like, until I was actually rolling and had everything going well, I would think people would kind of like look at me like I was an idiot. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? It's like, it's stupid. Who wants to learn how to meet girls and do that kind of stuff? And so I haven't, but now that I kind of have some reputation under me, I have caught myself a couple times, like when other people are talking about cool things that they're doing, I usually catch myself trying to be like, oh yeah, I went on this date with this girl the other day and this happened, and I think, I'm like, why the hell did I just say that? Like, who am I trying to impress? Like, I don't care. And I find it to be so much more powerful. Like, I've talked about this throughout my entire journey with articles on confidence and like building self-confidence and being attractive. It all comes down to, like, the more you're doing, the more confident you are in your life, the more you have going on, and the more subtle you are about it. It's like infinitely powerful. Like, the subtlety and not needing to tell people, letting them find out about things that you do on your own and things on their own and things like this, and not bragging ever. And essentially, it's just so attractive, and you can be confident, but if you're around bragging about everything that you're doing versus having so much going on in your life and being fully confident and just being very subtle about it and not needing to tell anyone, it's night and day. It's night and day, and it's just a really cool thing. And yeah, you have to be aware and catch yourself doing it. I don't snap myself with a rubber band, but maybe I might. But I'm pretty good at kind of reframing and getting out of that state. But what was I going to say? I was going to say something really good. I'll let you comment on anything on that if you want while I try to remember what I was just going to say.
Sure. Yeah, I think, it's just a matter of awareness, and I like to encourage you not to beat yourself up about it. It's pretty natural for people to try to qualify if they don't feel a lot of internal value. So if you're like having an awareness attack right now, don't worry about it too much. It's really common, and you can just be aware of it now and try to stop doing it. And the thing is, like we just talked about, if someone else is telling you a cool story and you validate them and you don't have to kind of try to one-up them or match it or whatever, you don't feel that need, and you just give them the validation that they're seeking in that moment, and then even ask them more about it, like what was so awesome about that for you. Again, they're getting to feel those good emotions that you were trying to get, and they're going to associate those with you, and now they're going to like you a lot more. So you actually raise your value by doing that instead of trying to raise your value.
Yeah, the perfect example is like when I'm hanging out here with John Cooper in Budapest. He's like the most social dude in the world, and he's like a dating coach. He's awesome. And like the first time I met him, you're looking at this guy who's just like, he's like where you want to be. So it's like if you talk to a hot girl and got her number, you want to tell him about it, And I found myself coming from that place a couple of times, and I just felt like shit every time I did. But then when I did go out during the day and I met a couple of cute girls and had some good experiences and had no need to share it with the people I was having dinner with that night, including John, like it just felt infinitely better. Like just knowing that I've got a couple of girls that I'm hanging out with tonight, but no one needs to know about it. It's just what I do, it's just who I am. And I struggle. What I wanted to say before that I couldn't remember was the Facebook one. Yeah, Facebook is crazy. You can see people who are trying to validate. And I struggle with it because I don't give a shit about Facebook. And if it were up to me, I wouldn't have it or post anything. But at the same time, I know that I need to post things to kind of get out my message out to the world and self-promote. And when I'm featured on a website, I should post it, because if it was up to me, I wouldn't post it. But I do now. And I feel like shit doing it. But I have to force myself out there to be like, hey guys, what I'm doing works. Like I'm not like a nobody or anything. Just because it's like a necessity in the world that we live in when you're trying to be an entrepreneur and a coach. But yeah, so just wanted to comment on that. But these are really cool, man. That last one's amazing. I mean, and it all comes down again to awareness. So,
well, and I think that transition into the last thing I'd like to say, which is, just if you can, keep being aware of not comparing yourself to other people, because whoever you are and wherever you are, there's always going to be someone better than you. And if you base your value and how good you're going to feel on being the best, like, first of all, that means that you're not going to be very comfortable around people who you perceive to be better than you, and those might be the people that you want in your life, so that's not good. And then the only people you're going to have relationships with are people that you think you're better than, which isn't really healthy for you either. So, if, like the guy that you're hanging out with right now, maybe he's just a little bit further along in his path, and that's okay. Yeah. And, the same thing goes with women. The last thing I want to say is, instead of kind of rating them in some kind of a scale, it's you're interested or you're not. There's only two modes, because if you rate someone as a 10 versus an 8 or something silly like that, that just basically tells your mind that this person is up here and I can't get them. This person is on my level or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if it's just like both of those people are just people that you're interested in, they're all kind of on the same playing field. And I think it's a lot healthier approach for both friends and women and yourself, is to kind of put everyone on a level playing field. Everyone has positives and negatives. Everyone just is where they is right now. Excuse me. Everyone, everyone just is where they are right now, I think. And so I think recognizing that takes the pressure off of you and also the people that you're hanging out with.
Yeah, man. And on a happiness standpoint, I know I had a friend who used to call me all the time and frantically unhappy because these people are getting married and this guy's in a long-term relationship for 3 years and he doesn't have a girlfriend, and he's like, where have the years gone? All these people they have the jobs that they want. And I'm like, dude, never compare yourself to other. You don't understand. Like, everyone has their demons. Like, if people compare themselves to me, like, I go through anxiety and stuff all the time. Like, I've got so many demons. So you don't know what's going on in someone's head. Everyone's got shit. Like, it's so rare to find that person that's just truly just crushing it and has no worries on his mind. But once you compare yourself to other people and you see them doing it, because on the outside things look great. For most people, most people you pass on the street, you're like, why do none of these people are upset or have problems, but you have, like, they could smile at you and say hello. You have no idea what's going on in their head. They might be going through bipolar depression or something. So it's crazy to compare yourself to others, and the only outcome is unhappiness, I believe, in my mind, once you start comparing yourself to others, unless you're looking down at people, but then it's just like negative, egotistical cockiness. But yeah, man, I think this has been a really wild show. We've gone over a lot, and I had Hungarian dudes talking in the background, fixing my shower, and I had to literally walk around with my laptop. So I hope it came across, because the information here is so valuable and amazing. And one thing people have been asking me to do is kind of have the guests kind of maybe go through like a 2-minute, like, what's your last final bullet point, or like if you want to just summarize everything we've talked about and leave people with a closing thought. I'll invite you to do that now.
Okay, great. So I would just say, take a long-term approach. If you really want to master attraction and relationships and your own personal growth, it's going to be a process. But even though that's true, continuing along that path is 100% worth it over the long term, in my opinion. And so wherever you are right now, whatever frustrations you might be feeling, maybe you're at a sticking point, or maybe you're not making any progress right now, just keep going and make it your practice in life to continue to grow as a person. And I think that's really the only way to be truly alive, is to continue growing your comfort zone, leaning into your edges, accepting yourself completely right now exactly as you are, and continuing to grow, showing gratitude for the things that you already have, and going after your genuine desires. Because one of the top 5 regrets of the dying is that they didn't live the way they wanted to because they were afraid of disappointing other people. And so I don't want you to get to the end of your life with any regrets. And the only way to live without regret is to take action even when you're afraid, and continue to grow, and do it in a healthy way where you're not putting yourself really way far out there if you can't handle it right now, but just keep going and keep growing, and you'll get to the place that you want to be.
That was a really, really good closing thought, man. That was really powerful. And you set the bar quite high. I'm going to do that on every show now.
I like it.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find out more about you? And if anyone's listening, check your email, because I sent a free program, and you can let people know how to get there if they aren't email subscribers. But yeah, where can they find you and learn more?
So the first would be my website. It's jamesdwolfe.com, and that's jamesdwolfe.com. And then I also have an Amazon author page, and that's just amazon.com/author/Jim Wolfe. But the best source is definitely jamesdwolfe.com.
Cool, man. Yeah, and if you're listening to this, that email probably was sent 2 weeks ago, because this show's not going to be out for a week or so. But if you want free programs, that's what we send you on the MenProvement newsletter. And so you can go to MenProvement.com and subscribe if you want to get in on that stuff. But thank you so much for coming on here, Jim, and thank you everyone for listening. It's been a really cool show, man. Take care.
Hey, Sean, it's been great. Thanks for having me on, and have a great rest of your day.
All right, man. Thanks.